I'll tell you what, let's start with Spurs against Liverpool. Before we get into this one, I want to hear from both managers. Ange Postecoglou coming up against Jurgen Klopp for the very first time. Let's start with Jurgen talking about Ange and looking forward to meeting him.
Tottenham's doing really well. And seems to be a top bloke. No, not yet. Looking forward to meet him. Pretty sure that everybody knew it already when you saw Celtic playing recent years. What kind of coach he is, how good he is as a coach, and coming out to Tottenham I think they were all desperate for some offensive football, and he's delivering that, obviously, and that in a year when Harry Kane left the club. He's doing extremely well.
Yeah, look, I like any kid, I had the posters up on my wall, and Liverpool was my team, and but you grow up and things change. I used to love Happy Days back there too, but I don't have posters of Fonzie on my wall either. So it's just the way life is.
I'm not even going to ask what posters LME and Rob had on their bedroom walls, and maybe still have. I want to start with Rob and talk about this horrific home record that Spurs have against Liverpool. Haven't won any of the last 12, stretching back to 2017. What has changed under Postecoglou that gives the Spurs fans hope that finally they'll get that much-needed home win?
I think it's just belief. And I think that's exactly what Ange has done from the minute that he walked through the door. I think often you hear that phrase, to be Spursy, which means just to kind of collapse and pluck defeat from the jaws of victory kind of mentality. I honestly think that might have already gone, and we're only talking about being a couple of months into Postecoglou's reign at Spurs. I think the way that they went to Arsenal really is a real indicator of how they're going to approach this entire season. That Ange sat there in front of the press last week and said that he wasn't going to change his approach. He was going to play attacking, aggressive, offensive football, even against Arsenal in a huge derby game. And that's exactly what they did and got a positive result. And I would expect them to do exactly the same thing against Liverpool. And you hear Klopp there in his press conference talking already about the type of football that Spurs play now. It's obviously something that they will have discussed behind closed doors as they prepare for the game. And it will be worrying a lot of these top managers in the Premier League. And Jurgen Klopp is one of those, that they'll be well aware of the type of football that Spurs want to play, and know that they are capable, very, very capable of scoring a lot of goals, playing very, very attacking football and winning these big games now. And they're going into these games with belief. And that is a huge thing in the Premier League. If you don't believe you're going to win, there's no point turning up. And Spurs finally, I think, have got that now.
And to play that attacking style that Rob mentioned, LME, they kind of need Maddison and Son to be available, because Brennan Johnson is not available, and he started last time out wide on the left-hand side. But it seems like not quite green for go just yet. But here's the quote from Ange Postecoglou about Maddison and Son. He says, "They trained today and they seem to get through it not too bad, but they're both still a bit sore after last week." He also said last week they were sore going into that. So for me, that suggests there's very little danger that these two miss this game and they'll be in the starting lineup. How important are Maddison and Son for Spurs, Luis Miguel?
Massively, both of them. I mean, let's focus first on HeungMin Son, the captain, who has in many ways reinvigorated himself after Harry Kane's exit. We always knew what kind of player he was, even with the national team in South Korea, and especially Tottenham, of course. But I think, just like Rob said, because you have Ange Postecoglou now delivering this new energy, this new sense of belief for Tottenham, I think the same has been said of HeungMin Son, who has basically said, look, Harry Kane's gone. I'm here to help you now lead the way. And it's happened in every single facet of the way. Of course, delivering for Tottenham against their local rivals, Arsenal, and now looking ahead to this really important game. James Maddison, to me, MD, is the most clinical one, I think, in this moment, just because he's leading in assists for the team in this early in this season. But he's such a special player. I've always been a fan of James Maddison, just because you can't really put him in a box from a positional standpoint. He is so creatively wonderful. He can play behind the striker. He can go wide. He's clearly, due to the assists leading statistics that I've just mentioned, he's also such a provider, specifically to HeungMin Son or Richarlison if he comes in later in the game. And he gives that X factor. And how wonderful it is that he's perfect for a Postecoglou type of strategy, right? They like to overload. They like to penetrate the danger zones. I believe that they're in the top 3 in terms of that, in the Premier League so far. And Maddison is very, very important. Obviously, Brennan Johnson not playing is a big one, but I think, they have the likes of Solomon that can come in there, Kulusevski maybe, right? But James Maddison is very important for this. So I think even at 80%, MD and Rob Dawson, you need James Maddison in this game.
I was looking at Liverpool's record of late. They've won their last 7 games, scoring 20 goals. 3 for Salah, loads of assists. Nunez, we'll get onto him in a second, and Jota's got 2. Luis Diaz has got 2, but Nunez with 3 as well as Salah. Look, the Liverpool defence isn't as good as the Liverpool attack. The Spurs defence isn't as good as the Spurs attack. So for the respective coaches, Rob, do the managers try and worry about how to stop the other attack from not being as kind of proficient as they have been, or do they just accept the likelihood is that both teams are going to score and it's about focusing on who can score the most goals? What do you reckon, Rob?
I think that Spurs will definitely be heading into the game believing that. You're right about Liverpool. I think they've only kept 1 clean sheet all season. I think they've been behind. I think they played 8 games and been behind in 5 of those games. So that shows you that they're not defending probably as well as Jurgen Klopp would like. The benefit for Klopp, though, is he's got those wonderful array of attacking players and they are scoring goals. I think the last 4 games have all finished 3-1. It shows you exactly how capable they are of scoring goals. And even listening to Postecoglou before the Arsenal game, suggested then that he knew that his team probably wasn't going to keep a clean sheet, but he also knew that his team were going to score goals. And I imagine he's thinking the same about this Liverpool game. It's difficult when you get into a straight shootout with a team like Liverpool because they've got so many attacking options. They've probably got more attacking options than Spurs. They've got the benefit of bringing perhaps players on the bench if players that start the game aren't performing particularly well. So in terms of options, I would suggest that Liverpool have the edge in that. But obviously Spurs are playing at home. So you'd expect a game full of goals, an entertaining game. It's a manager's nightmare when goals are leaking in at the wrong end. But obviously for the neutral, when the goals in both teams, it makes for a great spectacle.
Both Arsenal and Spurs don't like each other. They detest each other. They hate each other. But is there similarities, Luis Miguel, about Spurs' start to this season and Arsenal's start to last season, and that the expectations weren't high? I mean, people are just waiting for them to fail. Stevie Nicol, I would say, lost a lot of money. He didn't, because he refused to take any more bets other than to Dan Thomas after Arsenal made a quick start. So with this quick start for Spurs, is it a flash in the pan? Can we say that? If we can, what gives us the evidence? Because right now, unbeaten, they look the real deal.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Ange Postecoglou, as a manager, including Celtic, unbeaten in 40 home matches as well. So there's that Postecoglou energy. And I am, there's no secret to how much of a fan I am of the Australian manager. I just, back to the very beginning of how we started here, MD, let's remember something. Tottenham, even with Harry Kane, had 0 identity. 0. Of course, sometimes they would come out with a win, and sometimes it was, inconsequential, and it wasn't even because of the rhythm of the game. They just managed to get a game because they had one of the best strikers, in Europe. But now you have an identity. You have a clear, energetic, hungry, willing to die for anything identity. And I think that's the biggest difference, even so, regardless of how early it is in the season. Now, it's a good question that you ask, because how long can they do this in a marathon-esque season? Not being, in the Champions League, etc., European, that helps, because obviously you're just focusing mainly on the big target here. But early in the season, I am seeing indicators of a brand new Tottenham, a brand new type of philosophy. Now, how are you going to face against, in my opinion, and I know that we're going to get into it, the team that I think is the biggest challenger to the title in Liverpool? Because now Liverpool, I think they did the most important thing that needed to do that they didn't do last season, which is solidify and create a more dynamic midfield, which is what they have, right? So I think that the question is this: is Tottenham going to be able to continue for the entire season the way that they are? Of course not. Not every team, aside, of course, of maybe Man City, is perfect in their journey, right? But what you can definitely tell is that in every single game, because of Ange Postecoglou and that just infectious energy and identity that he gives, you can definitely know that whatever you see on the pitch from Tottenham every single weekend will be 100%. And that's something that Tottenham fans have not seen for a while.
Rob, let's talk about the midfield of Liverpool that Luis Miguel mentioned, because Szoboszlai has had a really good start. But he's not a six. He's a guy who can take the ball, he can shoot from distance, he can make things happen. We speak about all the goal potential for Spurs and Liverpool, but will this game be won and lost in the boiler room, in the engine room, with the Liverpool midfielders against the Spurs midfielders?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, and it's interesting that debate about the midfield, because Jurgen Klopp clearly in the summer wanted a more defensive-minded midfielder with the players that he chased, Caicedo and Lavia, who both ended up at Chelsea. So there was clearly a need there for Jurgen Klopp to strengthen that area of his squad. That hasn't happened, and I think probably he's built a team in a different way now. It's probably not as a defensive-minded midfield as perhaps he would like. Obviously, McAllister is a player who can play probably across 2 or 3 positions in that midfield, but is he an out-and-out holding midfield player? No, definitely not. The big benefit that Jurgen Klopp has got is those attacking options. He's probably got the best all-round attacking department out of any Premier League team this season, and that's probably where they're going to have success this season. When you're a manager and you can't fix the areas of the squad that maybe you want to, you have to focus on the areas where you do have those players. And maybe it is a season where Liverpool are going to go through the season and not keep clean sheets, but score 3 and 4 and 5 goals every week. Maybe they are going to go through and try and win games 5-1 or 6-2 and just accept that they are going to leak goals, but decide that they're going to try and outscore teams every week. Obviously, this is a great test of that against a Spurs team who are also going to try and score goals against you. It's a really, really interesting setup, because, as a manager, you probably want that defensive security or that insurance policy. If you haven't got it, there's not much you can do, really.
Yeah, but the neutrals aren't too fussed for that. We want goals. We want Liverpool of the 90s when they were decent, and Newcastle. Remember those 4-3 games? Speaking of goals, LME, you've written an article about Darwin Núñez. What's the Liverpool front three when everyone's available? It's Salah plus who? What do you reckon?
Well, at this moment, you obviously, can't ignore just the productivity that Lucho Luis Diaz gives on one side. And then, of course, you have the combination of Diogo Jota. You mentioned Szoboszlai, how he can go forward, etc. I mean, I decided to focus on Darwin Núñez for a reason. And it's because of the narrative that's happened to him ever since he entered the league. And I think he was unjustly criticized for a long time because, of the, opportunities that perhaps he wasn't taking, or that he looked raw, etc. I mean, a few things. Number one, we have to remember that he entered the league the same time as Erling Haaland. And I feel that for a long period of time, because of the price tag, he was often being compared to the productivity that Erling Haaland was given, which is basically almost practically, if not impossible for anybody to replicate. And two, because Darwin Núñez also, he's not, Erling Haaland is young, so is Darwin Núñez, 24 years old right now. He needed to acclimate himself, and he needed to be healthy. And I think that what you're seeing right now, and by the way, he's only started in 3 games, 2 of them in the Premier League, but in 336 minutes of action, he's contributed to a goal every 56 minutes. That's pretty impressive, taking in mind that he hasn't started in every game. And he's the ultimate, MD and Rob Dawson, chaos striker. And that's what Jurgen Klopp absolutely loves. Off the ball, his work rate is fantastic. He completely disrupts everything. And now you're seeing the acrobaticness, that goal against West Ham, of course, the clutchness against Newcastle United when it looked like they were going to lose that game. He is now delivering. And by the way, his national team manager is now Marcelo Bielsa. So now he's going to even learn more how to be hungry when he doesn't have the ball. So to me, we've always known, specifically, right, if you follow his career, we've always known the talent that he has. But I call him a bull in ballet shoes because he is so physically raw and talented. But sometimes, he needs to address the finesse of what he can do. And now I think specifically this season, you're going to see that. And with Liverpool trying to compete in the Europa League and getting a Champions League, competing in cup competitions, you're going to need Darwin Núñez to really, really give it his all. And right now, early on, if he stays fit, it's looking very good for the Uruguayan.
Well, we know he's got a new national team boss in Marcelo Bielsa, and he's got a new agent as well in Luis Miguel Echegaray.